I was afraid to share it, and I was afraid of the feedback from the greater world. So joining those authors groups honestly just scared the hell out of me. Having been in insurance as long as I have, and having been an underwriter, you're trained to think worst case scenario for everything. Literally everything. What's the maximum amount something is going to cost if you have a problem? Because you always have to plan for that worst case scenario, right? I mean, even if you shrink it down to less than that, like I wasn't listening to anybody until I was probably, almost 30 years old. I knew everything, and whatever they had to say wasn't important. And then I finally slowed down and started to listen, and I'm like, oh yeah, they were right. It cuts into my creative ability. I would rather get everything out and then go through and parse it down than not get the right things out because I was too worried about what I was putting out there.
Every leader has a story to tell, and the Safe Leader podcast uncovers the diversity story behind leading figures championing change to make our world a better place. Join me, your host, Mark McBride-Wright, as we hear from business leaders, academics, entrepreneurs, and agents of change as they share their journeys of innovation, resilience, and transformation. Together, we explore how they embrace the principles of safe leadership, sharing, acting, feeling, and empowering to create safer, more inclusive environments for everyone. Hello, welcome to the next episode of the Safe Leader podcast. I'm your host, Mark McBride-Wright, and today we are joined by T.A. Thompson, or Tracy Thompson, who is a dystopian fiction writer whose work explores survival, moral ambiguity, and the choices people make when the future is no longer guaranteed. His debut novel, The Mark, imagines a biological catastrophe that causes people to die young, leaving society without elders, continuity, or the reassurance that actions will have long-term consequences. Alongside writing, Tracy has spent more than 12 years working in commercial insurance, with additional experience across banking, sales, public speaking, and training. That corporate background informs his interest in risk, consequence, and worst-case scenarios, while his creative influences include dark fiction, epic fantasy, role-playing games, and writers such as Stephen King, George R.R. Martin, and Robert Jordan. Based in Milford, Michigan, Tracy is now building his writing career while continuing to navigate the demands of professional life. Following the publication of The Mark in April, he is working towards the release of a further novel, Arcing. Am I saying that right? Arcing?
You are.
Arcing. And brings an honest perspective on the discipline, uncertainty, and persistence required to develop as an author alongside a corporate career. Tracy, welcome to the Safe Leader.
Thank you for having me. That bio's quite a mouthful, isn't it?
I should have done my tongue twister, red lorry, yellow lorry, New York, unique New York, all those things that my public speaking coach taught me. I can hear Eduardo listen to it now saying, Mark, do your warm-ups. I love that diversity of perspective and experience. The fact that you've had some experience in environments where risk plays a part of the culture, it's a part of the function, and then you're bringing that across to the fiction world and creating a world essentially where the sort of it's lacking in knowledge transfer. But before we get into finding out about The Mark and the forthcoming book as well, let's go back and find out a bit about you. A bit about did you always want to be a writer? If you think about the younger Tracy, are you doing now what you thought you would be doing?
So when I was in third grade, I wanted to be a writer, and I wrote the worst stuff you can possibly imagine. I would draw little maps with little pictures, and then I would go through and I would just narrate what was happening, and it was terrible. And shout out to my third grade teacher for encouraging me to continue to do it because it wasn't
But
good.
that's you already doing the early foundations of storyboarding and just not just getting a pen and paper and just writing whatever you think, but you're already starting to architect a flow.
Yeah, I never even thought of it that way. Yeah, I
Yeah,
was absolutely. And
yeah.
and the funny part is it was real dark then, and it hasn't changed. I'm still very dark. I love dark humor. I love dark books. I love dark endings. So it definitely has continued from then until now.
Okay, okay. So what took you into the talk us through your career history, the motivations for what you went on to do in the corporate world.
So I would have loved to have started writing sooner, but instead I had a family really early, so I had to take care of them and
Okay.
provide for them. And then when I finally got a little more spare time as they got older, one of my daughters said something funny, and I got a great idea, and I just sat down and started writing. But this was like amidst my career in banking. And then shortly after that, I went into commercial insurance, where I've been for the last 12 years.
Okay.
Um, and it wasn't anything that I had planned on doing. It was just like, this seems like a good job, a logical next step. I already have the sales mentality for this, and I have the beginnings of the risk assessment mentality, which I've just built on since then.
Yeah, you're right. The sales approach, because writing the book is one thing, marketing it, promoting it, getting it out there, that is a whole other thing that they don't forewarn you of when you want to explore authorship.
No, I'm having a real hard time with it too. Just like I got done writing the book, and I was like, I'm an author, yay! I can quit my job, which I didn't, thank God. But yeah, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, I have to do all this other work. Like I can't
Yeah.
just write. What is going on? So yeah, I'm still struggling my way through that. Fortunately, I hired experts to help me at least get jump started with that. I think that's
Okay.
always a good idea instead of trying to reinvent the wheel. But there is some reinventing of the wheel going on with certain aspects, and I'm working my way through it.
Ah, ever you have to start somewhere, right? So you had that session, or did that right in based on a conversation that you had with your daughter. So was that the initiating event for resparking, or bringing out hibernation, even your writing path?
Yeah, yeah, it was. It really put that idea in my head, and instead of just being like, "Oh, that'd be cute," or "That would be funny," or "That's just a neat idea," it spawned an entire plot line in my
Okay.
head, and I immediately went from what she was talking about to the end, and I'm like, that would be a fantastic ending. And then I went back to the beginning and figured out where to start it, and then just started writing. And I didn't
Ah,
have an outline. I didn't have anything other than I knew what I wanted the main event to be, and I knew what I wanted the ending to be, and I just kind of worked through what I felt like logically
oh.
would happen to get there.
Tracy, you need to revisit the third grade Tracy who was doing planning along the way, and
Oh,
you know, because like it's a bit like when you do a painting, you sort of you sketch it out, and then you add more color, and then you maybe change bits and the depth and the contrast, and you layer it and layer it and layer it and build it. And I guess there's different ways to get to the end outcome, isn't there?
there is, and that's also why I'm not a painter. So, like, there's been times when I've sat down, like the book I'm working on right now, I have put an outline together, and
Yeah,
I've done a little bit more character structure. And as helpful as that is, I can't stand it. Like, if I'm
yeah,
writing something, I want it to be actually I want the word count to go towards the book. And sometimes I just get bored with like the background character structure stuff, and I want to just put them in
just
things and see
right.
what
Yeah.
happens. And I like the way that characters organically grow when they're just put into something. You don't have this huge background. In what I'm working on now, one of the main characters was just like some dude I threw in on, I don't know, page 10. just like, oh, this guy would be kind of funny, and then all of a sudden he's like a main character. So I love how that stuff grows.
Amazing. Well, tell us about your first novel then, The Mark. What was the inspiration for it? What's it about? Without giving too much away, obviously, because
Oh,
you
that's
want people
fine.
to get it.
It's a good read, whether or not you know what happens. So when I was in my early 30s, I went back to college and I took a biology course. And at the very end of the course, we had to get up and give a presentation on like a really unique unknown disease. Can't
Okay.
remember for the life of me remember what that disease was, but I remember what caused it. And it was a defect in the telomeres that are attached to your DNA. So every time your DNA replicates, the telomere gets a little shorter. Think of it like a fuse. When the fuse runs out on a normal one, your cell just doesn't replicate anymore. You get older. However, I thought, well, instead of it like running out and nothing happening, what if it just got to a certain point and then the cell died and like all the cells died? So essentially the host just dies, right? And then I like took that a step further. Well, what if that was, genetically engineered? And what if it was genetically engineered to happen at 22, so it was really young? What would happen to the world at that point? And I just took that idea and I kept expanding on it.
All right.
And I took that, that risk management thought process that I've put into everything now because it's just so ingrained in my brain, and I built the world around that entire concept. And then I took a character who had outlived that by a few years and tried to decide, how would people treat her because she's older? What decisions would she make expecting to die at any second? How would she respond to things? What would be her primary mode of dealing with problems, thinking that she doesn't have a long-term option available to her? So it was really interesting, and I had a lot of fun creating that world based on that thought process.
Yeah. For people who are listening that maybe aren't familiar with risk or risk management, can you just unpick a bit more what you mean by that risk
Sure.
management way of thinking that is how you think now?
So having been in insurance as long as I have, and having been an underwriter, you're trained to think worst case scenario for everything, literally
Okay.
everything. What's the maximum amount something is going to cost if you have a problem?
Oh, I see.
Um, because you always have to plan for that worst case scenario, right? So if you think about property risks, most claims are going to be, a few $1,000s, but you have to plan for that total loss.
Yeah.
And carriers want, they want to make money. That's what they're there for. And so they need to rate and charge enough premium to calculate for that total loss. So there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that goes into it, but
Yeah.
that was my everyday mentality when I was
The
underwriting.
mindset.
Yeah, so I was able to, start looking at her world and being like, okay, if, everybody dies at 22, what's the worst case scenario? No power plants, no police, no fire department, no doctors, no lawyers,
Oh gosh.
all of those professionals, they're all gone. And then, the anarchy that ensues from that.
Wow. How well, I need to read the book to find out how it ends then. But like, does the DNA like fix itself and then yeah, we'll have to read to find out.
Yep. Yeah, got to pick up a copy.
And then when it gets turned into some Hollywood blockbuster, it'll be like 28 days later and then 28 years later and 28 months later and you'll have the Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3. But
I
no, it
would
does
I would be fine with that, and so would my bank
well,
account.
it sounds like you're well, tell us a bit about the what you're working on now because well, it's got a different title to your first book. So is it a completely different story and setting?
It is. It is. So Arking, I actually wrote that first. That was the first idea that my
All
eldest
right.
daughter gave me.
Okay.
And I wrote that one. That one's more of a like a sci-fi, like based in real world, but something happens that causes weird things to like occur. And that one being sci-fi, a little bit more of a thriller, um, completely different setting, and it was based in present day when I wrote it. And it still is very dark. There's a lot of dark humor in it. Like I made the characters ridiculous on purpose. Like you have like your normal main characters, and then you have your ancillary characters that influence them a lot, and they're just extreme.
Okay.
And and then you got the main character walking around just like, oh, how am I, like, why am I surrounded by these people all the time? It's just every time I read it, and I've probably read it like 10 times, I just laugh, and my wife's like, how are you still laughing at that? Well,
Laughing at your
I
own
think it's
stuff.
funny. I think it's funny. But I'm
Well,
also the one who laughs at my own jokes, or everybody else is looking at me like, what is wrong with you?
well, it means you pick it up again.
Yeah.
Well, I liked the when we read the bio there in terms of the overview of the mark. This idea of the like not having the ability to learn from our elders. Do you think we do that anyway nowadays?
Yeah, but I feel like that's self-imposed. Once people get to a certain point, I know I do it. Like it's just like push them into the other corner, and you only
Yeah,
talk to them when you have to, um, because you don't want to hear about their irrelevant things that they've done in their life. But there's so many parallels and so much
yeah,
good experience that they can give to us that when I didn't necessarily do it as intentionally as I would like to say, even though I did have the idea in the back of my mind. But when you shrink that down to a much smaller time frame, and you have people who are 21, 22, treating a 25-year-old like they're the elder, put them in the corner and don't listen
God,
to them, it really just kind of like, why are they doing that? And then if you extrapolate that, why are we doing that?
yeah. You can apply it to you can apply it to like industries. I work in engineering, and it's an aging population. I think internationally, it's not just a United Kingdom phenomenon. I think it's the same in the US. The average age of the workforce is getting older because we are not attracting enough people to come and study through apprenticeships or degree programs. And therefore, there are more people retiring as well as they get get older. Do you think there's something in skills enablement or passing on the wisdom, the knowledge, the knowledge, experience, and wisdom almost between generations, if we can cut through those barriers that maybe make us put people or generations in a box and disconnect from them?
Well, I mean, even if you shrink it down to less than that, like I wasn't listening to anybody until I was probably, almost 30 years old. I knew everything, and whatever they had to say wasn't important. And then I finally like slowed down and started to listen, and I'm like, oh yeah, like they were right. There's no way I'm gonna ever tell them they were right, but they were right.
Yeah.
And I've tried to instill some of that into my kids, like, hey, you know, I have the experience. Your stepmom, your mother, we all have the experience. Maybe listen to us a little bit. And I can see them too, just the exact same mentality. I know what I'm doing. So when you then break that down to people who only live through the I know what I'm doing stage, but they don't actually know what they're doing. They're not trained in anything that can help society, and their main focus is just survival. It completely flips that dynamic on its head.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. And then I guess your sense of purpose as you get older, because your time on earth is getting shorter because you're getting older, you sort of start to reflect a bit on, well, what's it all for? What am I going to leave behind? What's my legacy? And whether you've got kids or not, it's who are you passing on what you've learned to? How it's one of the nice things about writing, actually, authorship, is you create an artifact then that is going to exist, that is going to exist beyond your time here. Once you get that ISBN number for your book and it goes on the back of your book, then it's there. It's always going to be there. What made you decide to do fiction over nonfiction?
Two things. One, that going back to that whole research and planning thing, there's way too much of that in nonfiction, right? You have to fact
Okay.
check everything and make sure it's right. Where fiction, I can make it up, and I love making it up. I think it's
Mm.
so much fun to see what happens and use my imagination and put the characters in situations and see how they're going to figure it out. Um,
All right.
I,
Yeah.
but that's a big part of like I'd like to play Dungeons and Dragons and I run the game, so that's what I do with my players is I figure out a situation, put them in it. Here's your end goal, figure it out. And I've done that a lot with my writing too, and I think it's really interesting to see what the characters end up doing because I don't necessarily have it plotted out. It's just
Yeah.
here you go. What's going to come out of my fingertips to get you through this.
Do you find when you're in your flow writing, the time just evaporates because you are so focused, you're locked away with your cup of tea or your cup of coffee or whatever your beverage is, and you just write, and and before you know it, it's 1 p.m. and you started at 9.
I wish it was that easy. There are times where it does flow, but then I'm finding like in the piece I'm working on right now, it's the longest one that I've written so far. The
Mhm.
word count is actually over what the other two books are that I've written, and I'm only about halfway there. So I'm having
Right.
to like slow down a little bit and go, okay, what have I already written? How does it play into this? And I
Yeah.
know where I'm going, so how is it going to play into that? So there's a lot more thought process around you know, every paragraph, every chapter that I'm doing, and that's slowing me down quite a bit. And then there's just times where it's like I'll be writing, and you get into a part of the book where every book has it, where it's you can't have all these high points, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Yeah.
like it's too much or
Yeah.
nothing's exciting. And when you get into the low points, at least for me, I'm like, ugh, I don't want to write this. I just want to go to the cool stuff.
Go to the
So
next high
that
point.
that ends up being a little bit of a slog. But once I can get through that, I use that to set up the next high point.
Yeah.
So and then those parts usually really fly. But I have
Right.
to do a lot more editing on those because I'm just so much more excited that I'm typing instead of really paying attention
Yeah.
to
You're
what's hitting the screen.
your point that the those three words we used in the intro, discipline, uncertainty, and persistence. Discipline is so important when you want to become an author. So how do you discipline yourself in your structure?
So it's balanced in the terms that I'm very undisciplined because I'm not one to like I said plan, right?
Mhm.
And I also am not one to be like I need to write X amount of pages over X amount of time.
Fine.
If I do that, it's just garbage and I end up deleting it.
Fine.
Where the discipline comes in is after I get the stuff out, I really go through it with a fine-tooth comb and okay, this needs to be moved around, this needs to be adjusted, this needs to be either expounded upon or deleted. And I do that. I mean, everybody has to do that. It's the editing process, but I
Yeah.
really make sure I focus on that because I know that I was getting things out. I find that if I really try to think too much about what I'm putting on the screen,
Yeah.
it cuts into my creative ability. I would rather get everything out and then go through and parse it down than not get the right things out because I was too worried about what I was putting out there.
And how do you at what point, if at all, do you get someone in to help you with regard to an editor, to a second brain, to be in co-pilot with you, almost reviewing what you write as you write it, and provide some like a sounding board?
So I try to I have my youngest daughter. She usually reads everything as I
Okay.
start putting it out. Now that she's an adult and she's an engineer, it's a little bit harder for her to find time to do that. I have a friend who is reading the current one, and she's probably to the halfway point of of where the book is ultimately going to go. I'm a little past that now. My wife can be hit or miss. She doesn't like to read something and then have to stop and wait to see what else is
Oh
going to
yeah.
come out, which I get. She also doesn't like reading on a screen, like reading on a computer monitor. It drives her nuts.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing is most of what I write isn't her genre either, so she struggles with that part. Um, but I definitely like when it's done, I get my daughter and I get one of my good friends to just read it. Give me
Okay.
your opinion on it. If I need to change anything, add anything, whatnot. And then when the Mark came out, I actually engaged beta readers prior to having it edited, and
Okay.
that was fantastic and brutal all at the same time. It reinforced everything that I was shooting for and what I was doing, and I got some accolades on that. But then they also just tore it apart. And you need to fix this. You need to add this. This doesn't make sense. This would work better. While that hurt, it was extremely helpful, and I actually put together like the whole epilogue is because of the beta readers. Like they said, we need more. Like this needs to make sense earlier.
Right.
So instead of changing the flow of the story, I put that in the beginning so everyone would know right off the bat.
Oh, that's
And
clever.
it is. I'm really glad they gave me that feedback because I've had so many people say this is what hooked me. This is what brought me in right away,
Right.
and instead of leaving them confused for several chapters trying to figure it out. I think when I first started writing it, just in my writing immaturity, I was like, I want people to really think about what's going on and really have to ponder it and figure it out. Not everybody wants to do that.
Yeah.
So I have
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
unfortunately, I kind of have to lower that expectation a little bit so that it can capture more readers.
Well, especially in fiction, if it's something you're picking up to read whilst you're traveling on the plane or by the pool or something, it's you want to be do some of the lighten the load a bit, albeit
Well,
the topic's quite heavy. But I love that. So that must be a tool, a strategy that writers use, is it? Put in an epilogue if you want to just really focus the mind of your leaders and very in a concentrated way take them to where they need to be to then understand what you're starting from.
I think that probably is a good reason for doing that. I know that the epilogue and arcing really, like at first, it doesn't make sense. Like, why do we even care about this? But it really focuses in on the main catalyst for why everything ends up happening. It just takes a little bit of time to get there. But every time you read about this, the one thing later on you're like, oh, what's going to happen with it? I know that that's important because of what happened in the epilogue. It takes a
Yeah.
little while to get there, but I want it to keep baiting people so that it pulls them in and focuses them on that, like you
Is
said.
the epilogue at the beginning or the end? What's the prologue? Prologue, epilogue.
Oh, I'm sorry,
No.
I got it backwards. Prologue, epilogue.
Prologue. Yeah, I was
I
just
do that every time. I'm
yeah.
sorry.
No, I wasn't saying that pointedly to make a point. I
No,
was
I'm glad you pointed it out. So
genuinely. But I guess that's the. I guess if you're not with an epilogue, then if you're not planning on doing a follow up book, but you did have some ideas of X number of years in the future where you wanted it to go, you could again in a concentrated way write what then went on to become or what went on to be.
you could put a little bow on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I put an epilogue log in the mark, and it was really more to set up the next book when I
Okay.
eventually get there. I also I feel like you said, it's a little more concentrated, right? And it doesn't have to be that full chapter length with all
Yeah.
of the breadth and detail that everybody's looking for. You're tying up loose ends, and then you're dangling a carrot for the next book.
Yeah. That's a hook to bring you back to write the next book. Absolutely. So how do you you've not made your millions yet from the authorship. So how do you find the balance between the structured expectations of corporate life and just the uncertainty and imagination involved in writing fiction?
Well, the corporate life comes first because it pays the bills. Fortunately, there's like times when I'm super busy and times when I'm not. And when I'm
Hmm.
not, I can jump in and I can work on the book during the day. That can be a little interrupted, which can be annoying. But you know what? Like I said, the corporate life comes first. And
Yeah.
then after work, if I'm not tired of being in front of my computer, I'll sit down and I'll do some more writing, or I'll do some writing on the weekends. Because of all the marketing I've been doing, I put down the new one for probably a couple months, and then we just went on a little vacation, and I took my laptop with me. And after I finished the book I was reading, I probably wrote for 2.5 days, just, and I hammered out 40-ish pages, something like that, which really
Brilliant.
felt good because I needed to do a little catch up and I needed to get back in the habit of
Yeah.
writing. And I've been trying keep that momentum going.
It sounds like you are more disciplined than you're making on.
When I wrote the Mark, I probably put it down for like 6 months,
Okay.
just because I got to the point where I was like, I need a break from this. Like, it's
Yeah.
almost becoming all consuming, and I have other stuff and other priorities going on. And I actually liked that in the long run because even though I put it down, my brain was still constantly thinking about it. And I would come up with ideas and be like, is this good? Is this bad? Where can I incorporate it? And I feel like because I did that, the book ended up being better because I
Definitely.
was able to put more into it, some more hooks into it, some more thought into it, and where I wanted things to go and how the different communities were going to evolve.
Makes sense. Makes absolute sense. Like giving yourself some perspective and let your subconscious mind kick in because that's where some of the ideas are, and then keep a little notepad or a little in your iPhone or something, some ideas as they come to you.
I can
Um,
tell you're an engineer. All of
yeah.
all of these notes and writing. Nope. It either stays in my brain, and if it's good, I remember it. If it's not, it goes away.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. No, we're very different. We're very different. I mean, the things that I don't know, as an maybe it's the entrepreneur rather than the engineer. If I don't take it out of my brain and put it somewhere, then it just stays in there, and my brain doesn't have that pre-filtering system of erasing it. Bill, on your computer when you empty the trash can, you send it to the recycle bin and then empty. I wish my brain could just do that. Instead, it just sort of stores and stores, and I can tell when I've got too much going on. If I'm it then starts affecting my ability to sleep, and my brain is just doesn't quite go into idle mode. Which is what it's supposed to do when you're asleep. So, but I find just having a book or having a to-do list or an idea list, if I just know I've put it somewhere, then it's out my brain. In fact, actually, my book that I wrote, The Safe Leader, was really the ultimate example of that, because I had all these like systems and frameworks and ideas and masculinity and engineering and research and training courses I was delivering and safety and diversity, equity and inclusion and mental health, and all this just needed to find a way to channel it. And so I started doing the public speaking circuit, investing in public speaking, but that didn't quite solve the problem that I through that process realized I needed to solve, which was to really synthesize my thoughts into something coherent and structured. So writing the book was that process. And then I remember it was because when you write a book, it's such an elongated, long process. And even when you finished it, it doesn't quite feel like it's finished because it's still in your brain. When I recorded the audiobook, which you do any concentrated piece of time, and it's a way to then re-experience your own content that you've written, it was a bizarre process. And I genuinely felt when I'd read that last chapter that I'd taken a chip out my brain and it's now out there. And it just freed up all this creative space. I no longer worry about not remembering what it was that I was trying to create or build. And actually, it's now got that space where I can then build upon it with new ideas.
So why do you think that the audio version did that for you?
I think it's because you get so back and forth with I forget the phases, the developmental edit to then the copy edit to then the like line by line edit and then the final publication. all of those are so back and forth, 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 back and forth that you start to, like you said, you needed a break from it. Well, I mean, my book took me 2.5 years time I got round to it, and I just wanted it out there, and I just couldn't read it again front to back on the screen. I just couldn't bring myself to read it front to back. So when I recorded it, then it was the first time experiencing the content in a different format.
And I can see that too after you start mentioning the different edits, because
Yeah,
when you have somebody who's then nitpicking every word and every sentence and where it's located in your grammar, you start wondering, is this even any good?
yeah,
Is
yeah,
this
yeah.
even any good? Because this person just tore it up. So then having that finished product, and I can see how it would be cathartic to then speak it
Very,
to the world. Uh, yeah, yeah, I think that that's great, and I'm glad that that helped you.
very
I
much.
I
It,
would love to record an audiobook. I don't have the voice for it. I would have to find someone else to do it for me.
oh, I don't know. I think you could record that. It's
Well,
yeah.
could, yes. Would it be well received? I have that Midwestern nasal going on, and it's not always appreciated.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, I've got the broad Scots come on, which Scottish accent, which yeah. I don't know. It's weird though. It's weird when you meet people who've then listened to your audiobook. Like that's how they've read your book through an audiobook. And I remember meeting someone when I lived in the US actually. And okay, we'd exchanged some emails, but she was just so familiar with me in the sense of it was like we'd met already and I hadn't. It was the first time I was meeting her. And then she knew all these things and I was thinking, how does she know that? But of course it
It's
was
creepy.
with stuff that was in the book. I'd put it out there. So that's how she knew that. To the point where
I've,
she was then finishing my sentences sometimes when I was then giving examples or stuff. But it
did you
was
marry her?
it was a weird experience. No, no, no. Uh, it was a weird experience. I'm gay anyway, so I definitely wouldn't have been
Huh, all right.
married. Um, and yeah, happily married anyway. Yeah, no, I think as an author, it's really important to surround yourself with support. So are you part of any writing communities, perhaps, or like other authors who are also writing their own books?
I'm trying to break into that. I've always been
Okay.
very insular when it comes to my writing. As much as I've enjoyed writing it, I had a hard time wanting to share it. Like I finished writing The Mark in 2020, and I had arcing done, a few years before that, and it took me until the end of 2025 to be like, okay, I have enough confidence in myself to finally work on getting this published. So, I was afraid to share it, and I was afraid of the feedback from the
Yeah,
greater world. So joining those authors groups, honestly, just scared the hell out of me. So now I'm trying to, like, I joined a book club, a local book club, and there's a
yeah,
lot of authors in that. So I'm trying to just get their opinions on the books that we're reading, hear what they have to say, and just I'm slowly putting my toe into that.
good,
So yeah.
good, excellent. Okay, you ready for some quick fire questions?
Yes, I am. I'm excited for this.
Right. Okay. When writing a book, then, plotter or improviser?
Improviser.
Morning writing or late night writing?
Neither.
Who's the most influential author?
Stephen King.
What's a fictional world you would love to visit?
Visit would be um, the Seven Kingdoms. Don't want to live there though.
Okay, and what's a fictional world you would never want to enter?
Mine.
What's the hardest part of writing a novel?
The marketing.
Most satisfying part of publishing one?
The positive feedback.
Paper book, ebook, or audiobook? What's your preference?
I need a physical copy in my hand.
What's one word that describes the mark?
Brutal.
What's one word that describes your new novel?
Dark.
And finally, what's one word that describes you as a writer?
Dark and brutal. I know that was 2, but dark and brutal. Good combination.
That's what people are going to get when they pick up a T.A. Thompson novel.
Yes. Be expected to be shocked and possibly horrified.
Wow. Well, it sounds like it's, like I said at the beginning, you're teeing up for some sort of Hollywood script. Maybe, I was about to say Stephen King will pick it up, but he's not a director. I'm getting mixed up with Steven Spielberg.
I'll give him a executive producer credit. That's fine.
Yeah, Stephen
He
King.
can put in a good word for me.
Of course, he's had his stuff turned into films, hasn't he?
So much of it. I think it's every time one comes out, I'm there. I love them.
Yeah. That was really interesting, speaking to another author and find out about your journey and your experiences, and actually where there's a shared experience, whether you're writing nonfiction or fiction. The journey to authorship is something that not everyone completes when they first think about it. But as you said, it's incredibly rewarding when you do it. So if people want to get in touch with you or get some of your books that are coming out, how would they do that?
Sure. So my current book and my next book will both be on Amazon. Just look up T.A. Thompson, and this one is The Mark. Okay. You can go to my website to find out what's going on, and that is tathompsonwriter.com. Okay. And then I have a Facebook page, and it is t.a.thompson.
Amazing. We'll put links in the show notes as well. Thank you so much, Tracy. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on.
Pleasure. You have been listening to the Safe Leader podcast, uncovering the diversity story behind leading figures championing change to make our world a better place. If you have enjoyed the episode, please subscribe to the Safe Leader podcast on your podcast platform of choice and get notified when a new episode goes live. Did you know that we also offer a full transcript on each of our podcast episodes? Check out my website, markmcbride.com. Here, you can also explore the training, coaching, and keynote speaking services I offer. And whilst you're there, why not join the Safe Leader community by subscribing to the Safe Leader Insights mailing list? Thank you for listening, and please come back and join us on a future episode.